Please welcome back to the stage, Ronnie Lott and Shane Battier.
Now it's my turn to sit next to Ronnie Lott.
Wow, but I could tell you, man, that was a great moment there. It's nothing like being in a divine moment. The thing that I find fascinating, and we were talking earlier, some people can make you feel comfortable, and some people can make you realize that you want to be a part of their life. And sometimes some people will be transparent enough to tell you about their weaknesses. And, you shared something earlier about who you are, and I thought, to me, that's a great quality. I got to ask you, because this is something that I'm thinking about. I've cried, and when I cry, because a coach made me cry, I got to ask you that.
I find that hard to believe. Anyone else agree with
no,
me?
and I'll tell you the story very quickly, but it was simple. Bill Walsh wrote me a letter, and he says, hey, you got to play better. And I thought, that's an interesting letter, and it made me cry. And the reason it made me cry was that what wasn't I doing? What wasn't I giving? Where was my soul? And it touched me in a way that it had something there that it made me cry. And I'm just curious. You've been around a lot of great coaches. Mm-hmm. Moments like that ever where you've had people shake you or get you to the core?
No question. I played for one of the greatest basketball coaches in the history of the game, a good Chicago boy, Coach K, Mike Krzyzewski. And I wouldn't be here if I hadn't played for Coach K. He turned me into a man, taught me about accountability. And part of that was you never wanted to let him down. And I've heard a lot of coaches and players talk. That's a similar theme to all these coaches, all these players. You never want to let a great coach down. And I'll never forget, it was my freshman year. I went to Duke University. Our biggest rival was the
Go Blue. No, excuse me, sorry.
The beloved North Carolina Tar Heels. It was a huge game, number 1 versus number 2. We're number 1, they're number 2. We go to Chapel Hill. We end up losing by 18 points. It's the worst loss in my soon-to-be my 4-year career. And after the game, we're watching film. And now I'm the golden boy. I'm the golden boy growing up. I can do no wrong. No one's ever yelled at me before. No one's ever yelled at me. And we get in film session. And they call it the truth tape, because the tape never lies. Here's Coach K saying, and Battier, I'm Mr. Golden Boy. Everybody loves me. I'm so smart. I'm so talented. Let me tell you something. I probably can't repeat what he said to me for the next 3 minutes, but it was for the first time in my entire basketball career. I had done everything right to this point. This guy was belittling me, making me feel terrible. And I told him in a very, very weak, passive voice, I'll do better, Coach. And of course, you're in front of all your teammates. You don't want to show any signs of weakness to your teammates. But I was back there holding it back pretty deep. But it was because I cared so much. And this is a man who I put my entire faith in. I did not want to let down. And that was the hard part for me, I'm sure, as it was for you, Coach Walsh.
When you talk about caring, where does that come from? If you were going to tell people about how to care, how do you care and why do you care?
You have to invest your soul. You have to invest your soul. You have to give up part of you. I don't care if you're playing sports or if you're trying to be a good parent or a good brother or a great coworker. It has to mean something to you. It has to mean something to you. And if you do give that part of you, success tastes a lot sweeter, and defeat tastes a lot worse.
When you talk about caring and being, and it's personal, relationships, and to me, I think it's one of the subjects that we never really get a chance to talk about. What do you value when you think about a relationship? Grant Hill, what did you value about the relationship of playing with him but being a friend?
Well, one of the coolest things still to this day is I can open my cell phone and I have Grant Hill's cell phone in my phone. I mean, if you had told me that back in '94, one day you will have Grant Hill's personal cell phone number, I would have said, Lord, you can take me now. This is the greatest thing ever. But for me, having great role models is the reason why I'm here. Grant is just the guy who did it with class, dignity. So often in sports, I think there's a perception you can't be a good guy, a nice guy, and still win. Mm-hmm. Well, for me, Grant Hill's proved that wrong. He's the best of the best, and he hasn't won a ring, but in the pros, but he's a champion in every sense of the word, and it's so important for young people to have people like Grant Hill to look up to.
And when you talk about Grant Hill, and I find it fascinating because I know his dad, mm-hmm. and I'm pretty old, but having a chance to know his dad, and what is it that what would you tell us about the family? Mm-hmm. I mean, and so there's some qualities there that I think that would be great for us to hear.
Well, I was very blessed that my dad, Big Ed, was always my coach in football and in baseball. He was never my basketball coach. Mm-hmm. He always talked trash, say, I'll take you and beat you in horse. But he was never my basketball coach. And he taught me more lessons through football and in baseball. And my dad, if you understand where I came from, Birmingham, Michigan, a small suburb of Detroit. There we go. I was the only black kid in town. And so in 6th grade, I was 6 feet tall. And Jared, I had a really bad haircut as well, so don't feel bad. There you are. But my dad, Big Ed, was one of the few black guys in town, but he was a big guy, and he was the baseball coach. And so immediately he had everybody's respect just by being default big black guy. But he's a sweet guy. But he taught me lessons growing up that I still carry to this day. And I'll always remember about my dad. There was a player named Joshua Farlow-Wallgast. Of course, I was one of the better players in the team, and we had a kid named Joshua Farlow-Wallgast. Now, Joshua struggled with the game of baseball. I don't think sports or baseball was his calling. He was a fantastic butterfly catcher in right field and enjoyed the post-game oranges and Gatorade. But my dad always treated him like he was an integral cog of the team and supported him, picked him up when he struck out, and at an early age, this was back in 1st grade, I realized I had to value every one of my teammates, regardless of who they were. They were my teammate, and that's all that mattered. And that's something I try to take with myself, no matter in the basketball court, with our foundation work. Mm-hmm. Everyone has a role, and everyone is important.
Here you are, you talked about some great qualities. What's the one thing that you haven't captured? What's the one quality that you would love to work on? I mean, I know that there's a quality in my life of understanding how to exhaust love more, give love, touch. I have a friend that every time I'm around and when I see him, he's 70 years old, his name is Mark Kazanoff, and he just loves people. Mm-hmm. I mean, he just loves people. What's that quality that you think that you would love to work on?
Well, we were talking about this earlier. You asked me what I'm going to do when I'm done playing. And I said I'm terrified because I have no idea. Growing up, ever since I've been 8 years old, I knew I was going to play in the NBA. And I've worked every day of my life to be in the position where I am today. Now that I see the end is near, I'm terrified. It's actually very ironic that we're here, Chicago Ideas Week, at Walter Payton Prep High School. Funny story, when I was a sophomore at college, I worked at a Chicago public relations firm. And every day after work, I would hop on my bike with my little helmet and ride my bike to the Moody Bible basketball court, the Solheim Center, to get my workouts in. And it was an important summer because Duke University, we just lost the national championship in 1999 to Connecticut. There was a huge defection of guys going to the NBA early. The cupboard was bare. Everyone said Duke is done. Guys like Elton Brand, William Avery, Trajan Langdon, Corey Maggette, they're all first-round draft picks. Duke is done. I was a player that averaged 8 points and 5 rebounds. The 2 guys who were returning averaged less than double figures. And people said, you guys are done. And so here I was, riding my bike with my helmet from downtown Wacker Drive to the Solheim Center every day. And Coach K used to call me. And he would say, Shane, how you doing? Do you picture yourself being an All-American next year? And I'd say, well, Coach, click. He'd hang up on me. Next day, he'd call back and say, hey, Shane, how you doing? Good, Coach. Do you imagine yourself next year hitting the winning shot at Carolina? Well, Coach, click. Hang up on me again. And this continued for like 4 or 5 days. I'm like, I'm supposed to be your guy. I'm a captain next year. Finally, one day, he said, do you imagine yourself winning a national championship next year? I said, yes. He said, finally, what I need from you is the ability to imagine yourself planting that seed before you can do it next year. And that's the most important thing you can do this summer. Imagine yourself becoming an All-American. Imagine yourself leading your team. Imagine yourself being one of the great captains of Duke University. And that was terrifying for me because I wasn't used to doing that. But it was instrumental. And so from those phone calls, I started to dream about the possibilities. It was my turn. What would I do with my opportunity? It was my idea. My idea was a quarter of a mile from here. So it's ironic, and we went on that year and finished the year #1. I was a second-team All-American. Came back my senior year, finished the year #1, won a national championship, had my jersey retired at Duke, and all that wouldn't have been possible if I wasn't able to have the idea and imagine myself in those positions. And so I'm living proof. I'm living proof. Driving by, just talked to my wife and said, that's where it began.
It's funny because when I hear stories like that, I'm always interested in the person who takes the next step in life. And you know, we've had a number of people talk about that next step. And now that you have to take the next step, and you talked about the fear of taking that next step, how do you overcome that?
Faith. You have to have faith. You have to have faith, and I love what Amy said. It's about what you believe in, and people buy that. And I like to think that what I have is something that people want to buy, whatever that is. And I don't know what that is. If you're hiring, I'm willing. If anyone's hiring, I'm willing. But it's, I think that's how you break through that barrier of fear.
Yeah, I think one of the things that's fascinating to me, because everybody here at some point has to deal with that. They have to kind of find whatever it is they're trying to sell. Mm-hmm. And I'm glad to hear that you know that you can. You know, that's the beauty of what you just shared with us. I got to ask you, with this lockout, what's it like? I mean, here you are, this is a moment in your life where you get to do a lot of different things. Yeah. I mean, you have choices. Yeah. And you took a choice to, or you made a choice to come here. Yes. And to bring your lovely wife, you know. So what is it that you focus on, or what is it that you're trying to be intentional about?
Well, it's a beautiful thing to be here and just be around people who want to do big things. And that's what's special about this week. When you're in sports, I'm sure it is, and Hunter will attest, you get around the same thing every single day. And it's just great to be in an area where people want to do big things and really change the world. And it's a lot of fun to be here.
Yeah, you brought up something and your wife snickered, and I thought about my wife, because when you play on teams that are great teams and then you play on teams that are bad teams, you live with that. You got to live with your wife, and my wife, that's my cheerleader. And the reason I wanted to share this, because I know we all have significant others or friends or relationships, and sometimes you need that, when you're down and nobody's cheering for you and nobody's playing because no one wants to show up, and you're the Saints at one time with the Saints, because I remember going and watching the Saints, and I was like, why do they got bags on their head? The Aints, but you got to find ways, in which I find fascinating, because I'm more curious about how he answered it, and I'd love to hear how you would answer it. How have you allowed yourself to play your position? Because one of the things that's fascinating to me about life is it's not just athletes, you live it. And I'd love to hear your perspective on. I love, because, but I think it's a great question, because it makes us all real. Part of the idea of life is to connect with everyone, and part of the idea of life is the reason we're touching everyone here today is that we have the ability to kind of learn from each other, and to hear his story, I think is powerful. But I also wanted, knowing the relationship of how to deal with that when you're by yourself. It's just the two of you, and you're losing. Yeah. Is it? What's that like? Because I think that it's not just yourself. It's also the people around you that you have to continue to rally and uplift and keep them going.
No question.
Or vice versa.
No question. It's not easy. It's not easy. But people want to get ahead in life, in business. It's those people that can pull themselves out, because you may have great people around you, you may not. A lot of times it is up to you to pull yourself out. And you look at any of the great innovators of history, they've all been down and out at one point. Much like every athlete has gone down that road. Yeah. And I don't know how you develop it. It seems innate in a lot of people, but if you can learn that skill, there's nothing you can't do in this world.
Yeah, it's interesting that you said that they were talking about Steve Jobs, and I was listening to an NPR, and he was communicating just that thought about when he had to come back to Apple, can he do it, and the possibilities of what he could do. And I think what's fascinating to me is that sometimes we don't know what we can do. We don't know the capacity.
Exactly.
With that being said, I think one of the fascinating things to me is, who is the greatest player that you've been around, and why is he the greatest player that you've been around? And tell us about the things that maybe we don't know about the greatest player that you've been around. Because to me, I'm always curious about, I used to hear about, Jerry Rice, for example.
Yeah.
I think he was the greatest player that ever played the game of football, but the reason that he was great was all the little things that he did that nobody knows about. But I'd love to hear your perspective.
The greatest player that I've had the pleasure of trying to guard and trying to stop has been Kobe Bryant, for my money. When I was a rookie, I played on a really, really bad Memphis Grizzly team. We were bad. And I learned what it meant to be on Kobe Island, where I would have Kobe Bryant, who's a young Kobe Bryant, so he's athletic and wild, and he had 60 points in 3 quarters against me. And I'm looking around for my help side defense. They're nowhere to be found. They're hugging their men. I'm looking at the coach. My coach is looking away from me. So I learned firsthand, and what made Kobe great was, I think he had like 40 points at a half. He has had a killer instinct. He was never satisfied. He didn't feel sorry for me, but and that was the theme that I learned from him, and then why I respect him the most. He's never satisfied, and he kept attacking and attacking and attacking. And luckily, Phil Jackson called the dogs off. He only had about 65 in 3.5 quarters. But he went for the jugular. And when he got the jugular, he went for whatever else was still beaten. And that's why he's different.
Are there people that you've met outside of basketball that have shown you that quality? And
yeah, I've gotten to know John Mack, CEO of Morgan Stanley, who was a great football player at Duke. But he's a pretty tough CEO, and as most successful CEOs are. But it's not everyone has that. We call it the dog. Not everyone has that dog in them. If you have it, you can do some pretty good damage.
when you qualify by using that term, one of the things that what I love about this subject matter is that all of us have that capacity to possibly be that if we really wanted to. Why do you think people don't do it? Why do you think what are people afraid of to have the dog or to not extend themselves? And I mean, I got my two football players over here that I've been trying to get them the dog. These two guys over here, I got two young guys. So what is it that? Because I think it's a really interesting idea.
I think a lot of people are scared of success. Ultimate success. Ultimate success.
That's a great ultimate success.
Ultimate success. Yeah, everyone wants to win a game and have a good game. What's that mean when you put together 3 straight 20-point games? Guess what people are going to expect you to do? Score 20 points. You're scared of maybe the ramifications of you being at the top. Trust me, everyone talks about being at the top. And it's great because of all the benefits that come with it, business, sports, you name it.
Right.
But there's a responsibility that comes with being the best, being at the top of your field. And it's frightening for a lot of people. How you handle success and how you handle adversity. You have to have the same single focused laser vision that the jobs talk about to handle both. You have to attack defeat and you have to tackle success with the same passion if you want to be successful.
Well, with that, I just want to let you guys know that, one of the great moments for me is when you sit around an athlete that talks about what that is. And it's nothing better than being around people who are trying to find it and trying to seek it. And I appreciate you sharing not only those highs, but the low, and really the transparency of understanding that fear of getting out there. I think that's one of the great blessings that you've given me today, and knowing that, it's going to be good though, man. It's going to be okay. And with that, I appreciate it. Shane Battier.